This meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Happy Saturday to you. This is Jay Michaels, and we're here at Magical Medicinals. Happy Krampusnacht to you.
Blessed Krampusnacht.
That is Mary Elizabeth Macari. Now, some of you may be going, huh? Krampus is as much a part of the Yuletide tradition as the word Yule and the word Father Christmas. Now, you might be thinking I'm being theatrical by saying it that way, but no, Krampus is not just a horror movie of 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whatever it was. Krampus is an ancient legend about a creature who takes care of the naughty children. Santa Claus takes care of the good children, but he takes care of the naughty children. And even the notion of Father Christmas. Oh, look at that. There we go. Even the notion of Father Christmas. What we call Santa Claus is as much a real figure, if you will, as what Coca-Cola has made it. I bring these up for a very particular reason. Mary Elizabeth Macari is an authority on these, on ancient legends, on a very particular word that we're going to talk about today. One word that has been so demonized, if you will, is witchcraft and the word witch. So to start off the Yuletide tradition, we're going to talk about what some of these words really mean. And the big one is witch. Mary, as always, thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. You are an authority on these things, and what you have taught me over the years is incredible, and I'm hoping you share even just a piece of it with our audience. How are you?
All right. It's a rainy, creepy Saturday, but it's better now than it was in New York.
Indeed.
Yeah, I found some more pictures of Krampus for people to see. I know people like to see pictures. If you're listening to this on my podcast, though, you won't see it. But if you just type in the word Krampus, Krampus, you will see all kinds of pictures of Krampus. There's older ones. This is interesting. This is an old one. Have you been naughty? Then beware. Krampus is coming. There he is, right? So it's the badly behaved children. We sort of got rid of the idea that, this bad thing would come. But I think people have it was banned by the Nazis, blah, blah, blah. I think people have gotten to a place where they have the elf on the shelf thing, which has kind of become a creepy part of Christmas. That there's this elf that watches all the children, and if they do something really bad, they don't get their presents. So I've had some kids tell me about these evil elves on the shelves. When I was a kid, they had these little elves that looked like, Kris Kringle elves that had like sort of movable, soft, puppety kind of arms and legs, and they were just nice. Now they become like Krampus. They're watching
Right.
for Santa. Yeah.
So I didn't know about Krampus actually until a student of mine who came from, I think it was Czechoslovakia, I'm not sure. And one day he sent me a picture of Krampus, and I just thought, okay, well, he knows I like horror movies, so that's why. And then I learned of this great legend, and it really got me thinking about what we do to these characters. And it's funny you say about banned by the Nazis. Tell us about you. We can definitely talk about Krampus, but our big thing, when I turn to someone and I say witch, and I say witchcraft, what image do they have, and how wrong are they?
Well, a lot of people have a Hollywood image of what a witch is. So there's the ancient idea, and this comes from before, us here in the 20th century or 21st century. This is way back, 1500s. There started this whole witch killing craze, or the burning times, as people call them, where they decided to hysterically, really, and for very, very little reason, start to persecute many women, most in particular women, for practicing witchcraft. And so this became a big thing in Europe, during parts of Europe, and then it did eventually happen here at Salem. This is why Salem, the Salem witch hunts, we all know this as Americans. But if you're American and listening to this, you might have known about this. I have listeners on my podcast that are in Australia and the UK, so they have a different perspective on that. I'm not so sure about, if anybody wants to tell me about the Australian witch hunts, if there was such a thing. I don't even know, but I do know that the United Kingdom was part of it, and I do mostly it was in Germany and Eastern Europe. A lot of it was there. So this is where the idea of the bad witch. There was a book called the Malleus Maleficarum. And this is a Latin name for, the bad, the book of evil, or I'm not even sure, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but Jay can look it up while I'm talking.
Maleficorum sounds like it sounds like it means bad workings or something like
Yeah,
this.
yeah. So what it was a book that people used, was published, and they used to find out if someone was a witch. So they would have all these different points of, a witch has things like, marks, or they don't float if you drown them, or they burn in different ways, or you can, under torture, make them confess to things like kissing the devil's butt in the guise of a goat, and that they had sex with the devil in sacred circles, and that they did horrible things to babies, etc., etc. So you can get people to, under torture, get them to say these things, and people did, because they had thumb screws on, or they were in an Iron Maiden with all these spikes coming through their body, or they were being burnt, or their feet were being hit, and so they would kind of admit to anything just to have the torture stop. And then they would ask them for other people in their town that were also doing the same thing, and they would tell on people. That wasn't even true. They would just say, oh, my friend, Anne, she's also a witch, and they would call her in, and it would just continue and continue this way. So it got to be that millions of people were murdered, mostly women, some men, but mostly women.
You bring up an ironic point, because the communism scare, the McCarthy era blacklisting, was called the witch hunts. And they essentially did the same thing. You would be brought to trial, and you would be blacklisted. You could never work in any industry again, especially not the entertainment industry, until you named names.
Right.
So yes, the notion of the witch hunt has many tentacles.
So that's the idea of the evil, but there's a truth to the fact that anyone, you don't have to be a witch, and anyone can wish harm on anyone. People do this. We've done this we do it to political figures, we do it to celebrities, we do it to our neighbors, we do it to our friends who are ex-friends, our bosses. We do it to a lot of people. People always are wishing harm on someone. Oh, I wish they would go to hell, or that's a curse, right? Go to hell, or drop dead, or go, even now, go fuck yourself. These are like these. That's a curse. It is. Do that to yourself, and no one should ever touch you again. That's the point. So it's almost like an impotence spell. So there are spells that are dark, right? So that's a spell. Anytime you quote curse, you're making a spell, and you're making what's called black magic in the vernacular of magical thinking. So it's black magic. And if you're trying to manipulate somebody, that's also considered black magic. So in other words, if you want someone to fall in love with you who's not in love with you, and you do magic to make that happen, then you're forcing their will, and that is not moral. And so that is black magic. So anything that's really not moral is black magic. Wishing death, impotence, destruction upon businesses, careers. This is all black magic.
I guess that's why when someone says, it's a curse word, right? Because you're not just saying, "Oh, fuck you," or "You're a son of a bitch." You are telling them now that you are now offspring of a female dog. You are now going to be alone and only can touch yourself. Right. So you're manifesting that go drop dead more than just telling them off.
Right. So that's a curse. Right? Go to hell. That's a curse, right? That would be a curse. Or God damn you, right? That's a curse.
Right.
But it is a curse. If you think about it, you're asking God to damn someone, right? So it's a curse. So that's black magic, or that would be very bad thought. And we're trying, people try not to do these things. We try to live by our moral compass, but people have done this and still do this. So that's it. I mean, that's dark magic. That gets to be taken to a very other place. Now, there are people who study the dark arts. I mean, really dark. There's different kinds of magicians in different societies. I don't know tons about it, but I do know that in Santeria and voodoo or voodoo, there are practitioners that actually specialize in dark magic, and they work with death. They work with decay. They work with herbs that are known to kill people or kill animals. They work with dark images and dark gods in order to bring vengeance on someone.
Now, when you say dark gods, how do you mean a dark god?
Well, like gods of the underworld, or gods of death, or goddesses of death. So that would be considered a dark god. So like one that everybody knows, and a lot of witches deal with. Her name is Hecate. She is a goddess of the underworld, say. So she might be considered a dark goddess because she's in the underworld, right? She's also she's the goddess of witchcraft, right? Because she brings power from the underworld. So the misunderstanding that comes into the whole thing is, yes, is there dark magic? Sure. Are there people that do it? Yes. Do people pay them to do it? Every single day, right? So do people wish bad on each other? Yes, all the time. Yes, every day,
Of
all the
course.
time. People wish bad on people probably all the time. Every day in your life, you're going to even accidentally wish harm on someone who you're annoyed with, angry with, whatever, who's hurt you or your family. So some people see that as a sort of a darker magic, as a sort of a gun, a weapon that you can use to protect yourself against harm, or what witches or people who practice magic might call hexing. If somebody's wishing you bad luck, you can wish it back. So this is where it gets childish and silly, and also very much you get tied into this horrible tide of I hate you, you hate me, I hate you, like a war. It's a war. It's a battle back and forth. And
Isn't that the notion of the horn? Because they're giving you the malocchio and you're essentially throwing it back at them?
right,
Ha!
right. So this is in every culture, though. If any culture, all the time, everywhere on the planet that's human, and I don't know, I don't think animals bother with this. We just kill each other, so it's easier. But if you can't do that, we're like told not to murder. So we murder with our words. We murder with our thoughts, right? You don't need a magician to do that. Although people like I think the drama. I think if you go to somebody, they say to you, go to that guy. He knows how to do, Paulo, which is the word for, I think the correct word for the Santerian magicians that deal with the dark side of things. You go to him and he will, and most of the times they are men, and he will make a spell for you with that dead black cat he found in the graveyard. That's what things like that. So, well, it works. It works for many reasons. It works because maybe if the energy of the dead black cat in the bag, or that he dug up, or bones, or parts of herbs that he uses, or is it his thought and your thought combined, or is it just your thought that manifests because you're looking at a thing and it makes it happen? How many times do people say, well, I wished bad on him and he had a car accident. Oh my God, do you think I did that? Yes.
Thank you. There's a big question I have, and I'm speaking in this head frame on it. Is there a difference if you go to someone who specializes in witchcraft and they do this spell to hurt someone? Is it the same that when you sit there and say, he should drop dead?
Yes.
Because I've had people, I said, don't say that. And they said, I don't mean it. But when they say drop dead, is it as pungent?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If you mean it, if you really mean it, right? But so we're getting onto the dark side. But so there were people with the word witch. We're talking about what is that, right?
Yes.
So I just found, if anybody's interested, you can do a quick search on YouTube. I found this really wonderful lecture by this teacher at Yale who was talking about just this very subject. And it's a pretty involved, detailed, historical look at this word and what it is. And the reason why I chose to do this today was because at, I think it was Thanksgiving, my son's girlfriend was talking about a friend of hers who wanted to know what my religion was. And she was trying to explain to her that I wasn't, that I'm pagan. And so the woman didn't know what that meant. And so she said, well, she's Wiccan. She didn't know what that meant. She said, well, she's like a witch. And she said, oh my God, don't insult her. That's terrible. Right? So a lot of people who are pagan, Wiccan, witches, and those that listen to my podcast know that they are, many of them, or want to be, that it's a confusing subject for people who are not really educated on it and don't understand it, and that being called a witch has been used as an insult. It's like being called a bitch. It's similar to that. You're a witch. When I was a little girl, my mother would say that to me. Oh, you're a witch, all the time. Perhaps she made it happen. See, that's what happened.
It's her fault.
Blame it on my mother. And so, so that word has a lot of history to it. So if you're really interested in that word, you can look up the etymology of the word witch very easily. There's a place online called etymology.com, and you can just type in any word you like. It's a lot of fun if you like words. But if you type in the word witch, you get the same thing that I'm going to say, which is a cunning person, a wise woman. So the word witch that we use in English, right? There are different words for witch in different languages. Bruja is the Spanish word for it, right? Strega is the Italian word for it. Those I know. I'm sure that the French word is very close to it. Stregarone is the word for a male witch or wizard, right? So bruja, I forget the brujo, I think is the male witch in Spanish. I'm not sure, but somebody can tell me because I'd like to know. But anyway, in etymology.com, it gives you English etymology, right? So you look and you type in the word witch and you get this word witche, a W-I-C-C-E. And I've said this before in podcasts and stuff. Witche or wicke means to bend, means to bend fate, to bend, right? But to bend anything. So they would say these people were able to bend your fate. And that didn't mean just evil magic. That meant, hey, I have a stomach ache today and I got a really bad belly ache, and you go to the wise woman and she gives you an herb for that helps you digest. Or I think my husband is having an affair with another woman. Can you throw down the shells, the cards, read my palm, look at the tea leaves, and tell me if that's true? And if so, how do I stop it? Oh, here's a candle, light that. That'll help you find your way in the dark with your husband. Simple things like that. Or I was just thinking before we started, what's a witch? Well, what's a wise person? What's a wise woman or a cunning man, right? That could also be used as a man, a cunning man. Well, those were what we know to be today in other words. We've transformed that word, those words, to take them away from the dark thing that is associated with them, which is if anybody is an acupuncturist, they're a witch or a cunning man. If anybody is an herbalist of any sort, if anybody is a massage therapist, that's also considered a healing thing, right? But that would also at that time and past be considered a wise woman's work, right? Midwives, wise women, any kind of doctoring, anything to do with pain, teeth, bones, resetting bones, massaging the body, moving energy, which is things like yoga is moving energy, and Tai Chi is moving energy. Martial arts is moving energy. So all of those people would be considered witches or wise women and cunning men who specialize in those things.
This is blowing my mind. So anything that is not simply
even Yoda. Yoda's a witch. There he is behind me.
Oh, there he is. So anything that wouldn't be simply considered, I'm going to my doctor, he's handing me a pill, and I'm going for surgery. Other than that, if it's ancient in any way, you're actually practicing witchcraft.
Yes.
Wow.
What we consider to so where it comes from is this, right? So the church itself. See, remember, before there was any Christianity in most of the world, there was paganism, right? They call them pagans. Pagans that believed in different kinds of gods, goddesses, fertility gods, goddesses, dark and light gods and goddesses. Dark, when I say dark gods or goddesses, I just really sort of mean gods or goddesses of the underworld, or those that are around at the dark time of the year when there's nothing growing, like the winter. Those are considered the dark times because there's not a lot of sun. We've taken that word dark and made it really misconstrued it and made it something entirely different. It's just about, it's dark. It's not light. That's all it really means. It's not scary, spooky. Sure. Well, the dark can be scary and spooky. Yeah. Thinking about going and dying, that could be scary and spooky. And so any god or goddess that ruled the underworld may be scary and spooky, but they're not. It's just a natural part of life. Death is a natural part of life. And being in the dark is a natural part of life. It's just the other side of the light. It's nothing
so
bad.
Really, it's taking that slang expression. Well, I don't know what he's talking about. He left me in the dark.
Right, exactly.
It just means it's the unknown. You don't know what's in that area. So it's the dark thing.
Right. So our pagan ancestors understood this. They understood other things because they lived on the earth, and they paid attention. We don't really so much do that anymore. We kind of, they had to keep their own fate in their own hands. They had to understand the way nature worked, the way light and darkness worked, the way energy worked, right? So of course we know somewhat that people thought things like lightning was a sort of a god form, or the earth itself was a goddess, or the ocean was a goddess. So that became like natural things, natural parts of life. The sun itself is considered a god, right? Ra, the ancient Egyptian god of the sun, and many others actually. So our ancestors named them gods. Gods to them, I think, was just holy. It's just a special thing. It's not something that was so spooky or scary or dark or light or it was just nature. And they named them things, and it stayed and it got passed on over time, right? So when uh, the Romans came through many parts of the world, they brought with them their religions, which at first was Mithraism, which was Mithras was the sun god that they worshipped at that, and most of the time that they were trying to conquer most of the world. But they had other sun gods as well. The Greeks had Apollo too. So, but they kind of tramped around the whole world and said, you know what? No, you're going to believe in our God. And so people said no, and they said, well, you'll die. And so they did. People then said, okay, I believe in Mithras also. That's fine. We'll call our God, who's our sun god in Ireland or wherever it was, England, say, and we'll call it Mithras now too. Why? And then one of the emperors on his deathbed
Constantine.
Constantine, to convert to Christianity, because he was told that if he asked for forgiveness of his sins, he would not go to hell, which he started to believe in and got scared of. So he did. So when he converted on his deathbed, the entire Roman Empire, guess what? Now they're Christian. So they're what we would consider now Orthodox or Catholic, or Orthodox, a different kind of Christianity. It's not Protestantism. It's more like
Roman Catholic.
Roman Catholics, right? Catholic means Orthodox. So they took over things and said, hey, guess what? Now you have to pray to this guy. This is how we want this done. We're going to do this way because the emperor said so, and that's how we're going to do this. The church became, because it was really the Roman Empire in a lot of ways. So, right, the Pope was almost a king, is a king, and is in his own right of his own country, which is the Vatican, right? So this was what you prayed to. This is it. And if you didn't, and you stood outside of it in any way, or you believed in false gods, which would mean any god that's not the God that we're praying to today in this religion at this moment, right? Then you are evil. If you are using power, if you're not going to the church, if I don't feel well, and I go to the priest in the church and I say, I don't feel well, in ancient times, now I don't think it would ever be the same. He would probably recommend a doctor, right? But in ancient times, you would go to a priest and say, hey, I don't feel well. He would say, okay, let's pray. Let's ask God to help you. Let's ask Jesus to help you. Let's do that. Do these many prayers or rosaries, or, you got to be forgiven for your sins. Have you sinned? If you've sinned, you've been punished. These kinds of things. That's where that advice would come. You go for that advice. And anybody else who gave you any advice that was different wasn't in the church and was considered evil, was considered outside. It was the darkness, the bad people that did that. So that took away all the power of these people who for centuries and through their families have passed on these arts, and they were stopped. So you had to go through the church only to get your everything, or you were in trouble. If you were autonomous in any way, you're in trouble.
You bring up an interesting equation. So if you are of the ancient ways and you know to do certain things to be well, now you go to the church and you say, please, I'm sick, I'm always throwing up, whatever, what's wrong with me? And the priest of that time, when we talk about the church, we're not talking about the religion, we're talking about the structure, if you will,
right.
The organization.
No.
Exactly. The priest might say, well, what are you doing wrong? Well, nothing. My great-grandmother has taught me to take these herbs and to carry this amulet. And he'd say, see, you're being punished
right.
for disobeying the one true God. So
right.
That's where we get, how many times do we all say, oh, I'm being punished, nothing goes right today. Right. So it's one demonization to get another one through. Right. Seems to be the occasion. Oh, that's also how that happens. Okay.
Well, if you also, it's a form of power. So if you disempower people's beliefs and make them do what you say, you could be killed if you don't follow our law here. You become more powerful because now they have to follow everything you do and say, right? The church itself or the government. I mean, certainly you think about kings doing the same thing, right? So right. It was the same, similar thing. So people are asked to give their will over to this other thing, this huge thing, the church. So if you did anything else, if you were anywhere else doing anything else, you were in trouble. Now the word pagan, pagano, means country, means somebody from the country, and that word was used because people who were in the country and too far away from where people were actually being converted or in larger towns or cities, They didn't know anything about this stuff. They were like, what are you talking about? We have this God. We use this guy here. This is our friend. This has been forever. Our fire God, say, for example. We pray to him, for warmth. Okay, well, that was considered pagan. Country folk did certain things. By the way, it still exists in so many countries in Europe. It doesn't happen so much here with the people who've come to America. Native Americans still do stuff this way, very much so, right? They still follow their gods and goddesses from the past, many of them. But in our European ancestry, African ancestry, even Chinese or Asian ancestry, there are gods and goddesses that are still honored. As a matter of fact, in China, they have a huge Kuan Yin festival, which is the moon goddess, Kuan Yin. She still exists. They have cakes they make for her. They honor her. They sing to her. There are full festivals. In places as you wouldn't even think, like in England, they have things like the Morris dancers, and which are fertility. They do fertility rites using sticks as phalluses, and they still do it. They also do things all around this time of the year through harvest time, from like the fall all the way through into the winter, to keep to honor the gods and goddesses that have given them fruit and food. And they call it other things, but they know what they're up to. Especially the Welsh do it, the British do it, the Scottish, the Irish do it. So the French do it, especially in Brittany, they do it. And it's all through Spain, it's all through Italy. There are ancient.
We look at them as quaint customs. Even here, we have the Yuletide celebration of the Christmas tree with Santa Claus.
No, we're going to talk about that the next time, right? We're going to talk about
definitely
Christmas.
I'm just giving the little thing there. We do it ourselves, and we think of them as quaint traditions. Oh, it's the Yuletide. We don't think about what Yule actually means, and you're going to tell us next time.
Right.
But so many cases, and in all these countries around the world, the Kuan Yin festival, it's become this great tradition. But they think, oh no, that's okay. It's separate from this.
Right. Well, but they can do that, and they do that. A lot of people do that. It's like, oh, that's this thing, but we're Christian too, right? Or we're Jewish too, or we're Muslim too. But the big three, the big three Abrahamic religions.
Right.
A lot of people are in those three religions, right? But we do this too.
One of the Ten Commandments says, "You shall have no other god but me."
Right. So you don't call them gods. So what you do is call them saints, right?
Right.
And a lot, the saints, that's because I was raised Catholic. And so when I found Wicca or paganism, I was like, oh, and even my mother, who got very, very worried that I was going to do this, read a book. I gave her a book it was called What Witches Do. It's a book from I think the 60s. And she was like, what are you talking about? This is what we do in church. I'm like, yes, because we're Catholic. Because the Romans were not Protestant. They were very much they weren't strict and organized the way the Christian religion has become over time, right? Even it's still Greek Orthodox and Roman Catholics, even to today, are still very pagan in their root, the way they do things in the church. They're very pagan, and the candles being lit, the chanting, the colors that they use on the altar, the ways that the priests dress, the representation of things in the room. The Virgin Mary herself is the goddess, fertility goddess of the ocean. Mar means the ocean. Mari means she of the ocean. So there you go. So it's right there. If you scratch the surface of Catholicism, Catholic. To say that for me, I can't say it. I can't even say it anymore. Of the Catholic religion, you start to see paganism everywhere.
It became a sense of adoption. They didn't want to get rid of this so much, so they would call it another name. They would make it a part of things, and like you say, the god became the saint. The god became the tradition, the story, etc., right, as opposed to the ultimate beings, if you will.
I studied for a little time. I didn't really delve into, but I studied Santeria a little bit, and it was very interesting for me to see how African slaves were converted to Catholicism, right, by the Spanish and whomever, the Portuguese, whoever was taking them through the world, and they were not allowed to pray or work with their gods, right, from their country, their ancient gods. So they learned how to adopt these saints and transform them into their gods. This is voodoo as well, voodoo or voodoo, the same. And so both of these religions, and they are African-based religions, and very much what you'd call pagan from Africa, not Christian, Jewish or Muslim. So they converted those beings, those gods, into saints. As a matter of fact, I can think of some like Oshun is a goddess of the river, and she's been adopted into the visage of one of the Marys, one of the virgins. And also there's a Saint Barbara. This is a male god called Shango. So those are just two examples of what Santeria would have done. And voodoo is the same. They just said, oh, okay, this looks like that god, so we'll call it Saint Barbara, but really it's a fire god. And it is because she's wearing red and she has a sword. And so, yeah, that seems like him. So we'll call it that.
You also just blew my mind again. Oshun is the goddess of water?
Of a river, yeah.
Of a river. So Oshun, like ocean, is the goddess of a river.
Of a river, right.
Okay.
And she's a goddess of fertility and love, really love. And love, and water is a feminine force. Water is considered one of the elements. And by the way, these elements that people are afraid of, the earth, air, fire, and water, right, that witches use, are all parts of just earth itself. We live with earth, air, fire, and water. And the ancients had attributed certain, they sort of, not humanized, I guess they just sort of said, here, water is feminine, it's receptive, it's open like a basin, and so things are open, it's a womb, like where babies come from, and babies are in water, thus water is feminine, not female, feminine, receptive. Or in the sun seems hot and it's above us and it's strong and it dries things out. Well, that feels masculine. It's almost like a force of push and creativity that feels masculine. And
so when we talk about a woman's water breaking and she gives birth, so of course the ancient cultures, they saw water first and then they saw the baby. So of course water is the woman, is the female, is the creativity.
So that's the ocean and rivers and ponds and lakes are feminine.
And of course the sun, because every great warrior, every great warrior had his torch, and so of course the sun, the fire, the man,
he had his penis. Well, he had his penis. I mean, penis is a force of creativity.
There you go.
Yeah, that's your sword, right? That's your flesh sword. That's what it is.
There you go.
So it is, and you puncture a woman with it, don't you? And then babies come from there. So that's a force of creativity. What comes from the man, right? So that's masculine. Anything that's like that. Fire is also considered masculine. Mm-hmm. Earth is considered feminine also because of the way it takes things in, like dead bodies, and then it grows fruit. So it's this place where it's a womb, where also where you go when you die. You go back into your mother, back into the mother, Earth, she herself, and you come back again, reborn as something else.
And today we sit there and we say it's not nice to fool Mother Nature.
Right, that's a commercial from the 70s, right?
Oh yeah. Wow.
Yeah, Mother Nature, right? That's it. Everything around us is she.
Now, air is intellect.
Yeah, so air is also masculine, and intellect is considered masculine. And you speak. I'm speaking now. I'm using masculinity. I'm speaking. I'm using my intellect. I'm using my mind. So therefore, that is masculine. I'm expressing a thought and sending it to you with my words. Thus, it's masculine. I'm giving out to you. I'm not taking in. I'm giving it out.
Would you say it became male because the philosophers, the leaders, the emperors, if you will, were usually male, and so if they were the ones strategizing, if they were the ones announcing, so you got the intellect, you got the communication out of men, so that's why it
could be
masculine.
Maybe, I don't know if that's true, because I know women. I think I know women were a part of that whole creative part of society. They had a voice too in ancient times. It wasn't so much so that they were shut down like we are now, or have been for about 10,000 years. Yeah.
So when we say witch, we are just talking about people who understand the earth, who understand all that the earth yields to us, and understands how to use that to keep us well.
Right. Even in like the Farmer's Almanac, there's this whole thing, and there was a whole problem about a year ago, 2 years ago. People got upset because they put in things about astrology, right? So they put in, many people still plant and harvest and do many things like get haircuts by the phases of the moon. They also deal with, chickens and breeding animals, all by the phases of the moon. And so some people were like, this is magic, this is witchcraft. They're like, no, this is just natural tides. And we've been using these forever and ever and ever. So they stuck up for themselves. And they said, we'll put in more saints' days to equalize it out, because they don't want to take away their astrology. They think, that would be dumb because so many people plant by that. you're looking in an almanac to say, when can you plant by the moon? Also, because you're looking in an almanac to see when is the last frost? When is the sun going to be coming back? When is it going to get warm again? So everything comes from that. So even then, even in the almanac, they had to like give in and say, look, it's not evil. We're not talking about evil. We're talking about just the moon herself, itself. It's just its energy, the way it pulls the tides, it pulls plants, it helps things grow the same way it moves a high tide and a low tide. It's
So
a funny thing.
herbalism, astrology, and they would be considered, pardon me for lack of a better term, witchcraft.
Yes, by the
And
church, not like ever. I mean, before
of
that,
course,
no.
before that, of course, they were revered. But once you had the prevailing faith, if you will, and even the Jewish faith was considered a form of witchcraft.
Well, it's considered heathenism.
Right, right, because of their use of candles and their use of traditions and things like that.
Well, because of the church. Well, think about that. The Roman Catholic Church, the church itself said, "Oh, you're not going to convert and be one of us. You must be the outsider. You're an
Right,
outsider, and you
right.
can't. What you do is wrong. That's it. We can't hear it. We can't deal with it."
Now, the interesting thing, because the Roman Empire, they conquered. They became the Roman Empire because they conquered. So the moment they decided that Christianity was to be their faith, then of course they used that conquering element to send it worldwide. Rick Levine, a name you know well, he predicted.
Well, who's Rick Levine? Let's tell them he's
Oh,
an
you should
astrologer.
please. I leave that to you. You would say
Well,
it
he's
much
just
better than
this wonderful older gentleman who's calls himself Merlin, which is fantastic. And or I think that's his middle name. Anyway, he's been an astrologer for a very long time, and he has a beautiful thing that he does on YouTube once a month. Rick Levine, Rick Levine, Levine, and he does a forecast for the month. In a very heady, very deep way, not so much spirit, but more math. Uh, um, some spirit about what's going to happen in the next month, not just based on energy. Not he won't tell you specific like, hey, this is what going to be a volcano is going to blow up or things like this. He will say, hey, this is the influences we're all going to be feeling for the next month. And there are many other astrologers, by the way, on YouTube at the moment who are really pretty wonderful. And I'm just going to give a plug for Astrology Hub because this is wonderful. Amanda Pua Walsh is a woman in Hawaii who runs this beautiful hub, and she brings together some of the best astrologers all over the world. And she didn't pay me to do this because I just am part of it, and I think it's just a wonderful thing. And if you're interested in astrology, you ought to head over there. And she has a Facebook group, and she does almost every day one of the things we're doing, a live Facebook talk with different astrologers. And she does this wonderful thing where she has people teaching and lecturing on all different subjects. And Rick Levine happened to be one of those as well. He does a beginner's astrology course there called Foundations, which is great. So anyway, so that's Rick Levine.
The reason I bring him up is because he, in essence, predicted the pandemic.
Well, he's not alone in that.
Right. Many astrologers simply looking into the stars, they discovered how Saturn and Pluto at a certain time, and while he didn't say we're going to have a pandemic, he said around this time, there's going to be a major shift, a major change. This will happen, that will happen. And it all did almost down to the day.
Yes.
He would have been called a witch back then if he turned to the
burned.
people and said,
he would have burned alive for that. That's right.
He would have been burned. He would have said, look at what I saw from the sky, and that would have been it.
Yeah. Well, what happened to Galileo? Remember?
Oh, yes.
You tell me what happened to Galileo.
No, I allow you, please. My history is so terrible.
It's gravity. This
Yep,
happens.
yep.
Here's gravity. I believe in gravity. There's a force that the Earth emits somehow, and this is what keeps us from flying off the planet. Nope, God does that.
Right.
That's all we know. Don't go against what we know. Don't show us anything different. To this day, there are people who are super Christian and religious and don't believe in a lot of things like evolution or science in general. So it's just only what God has done, and whatever the God they believe in has given them, and that's all that matters.
It's interesting. There's a middle ground to that. I hear the term intelligent design a great deal, and I think that's some way of trying to bring both the ancient times and I guess the New Testament times, if you will, together by saying, oh yes, this all happened, but there was a force that allowed it to happen.
Okay, maybe there is. Whatever.
So to be afraid of witchcraft, that's the Hollywood way. That's the ancient church way.
Right.
Because uh, it was stopping now nowadays doctors don't abide by these things either. They don't certain things they might, but they're always leery of it. Why did the medical profession suddenly decide to jump on the bandwagon and call witches, not so great?
Because it was competition.
Ah,
Because there were people that were trying to, there were people go, I think you say, I'm gonna be not sure of my dates, and I'm gonna just guess, and I think it's around the 1600s or so, maybe a little earlier. I think earlier, during Elizabeth I, I think that there became this whole bunch of experimental things going on, scientific research in things called alchemy. And they were trying to change things into gold. There's a long story behind that. I'm not going in there, but one thing rose. They were one thing happened after another. As a matter of fact, it goes back as far as I know that Leonardo da Vinci was doing stuff like opening up cadavers and looking inside of them and seeing how things worked in the body. So that's been going on quite a long time. So people are trying to figure out how the body worked as a machine, right? How does it work, and how do we heal it? So they believed in things like humors, which, by the way, we still use in medicine. We still call it the humoral system of the body, by the way. That's anything that's fluid in the body. Those are humors. But they believed that there were air humors and water humors, et cetera, et cetera. And they tried to, you work with those. And they tried to do things like bloodletting was a big deal. As a matter of fact, George Washington was pretty much murdered by his physicians by being bled to death while he had some kind of a lung illness. They kept bleeding him and bleeding him. And he said on his deathbed, "You are killing me. You're killing me." And he died. So, they wanted to make this a career to earn money. They wanted to take the power away from anyone who was doing it. And for the most part, I'm not saying there weren't men. There were men who did this work. Cunning men is a common thing. Or people use the word wizard. And by the way, I just want to throw that in there. Let's just throw Harry Potter in the box for a second. Because of her and Harry Potter, for whatever people feel about her, she changed the way people see witches now a little bit, a lot of it. A lot of that generation that
interesting.
grew up with Harry Potter don't feel so frightened by it because a lot of the stuff in her books is actual magic. Not all of it. You don't go achio something something with a wand and sparks fly out and a deer comes and walks on the water. That doesn't happen. I wish. I do. I wish.
That'd be a lot of fun to watch, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
the fantasy part of it is a little extreme, but it's fun. And kids got to see that and grow up with that and not be afraid so much. So now, truthfully, when I say to a millennial, "Hey, I'm a witch," they're like, "Cool." They don't care. They're not, but if you are, that's good. They don't have that much of an issue with it. Not so much really anymore, which is fantastic. There are people that still do, but most people are better that way. Where was I? What was I saying? So the medical. So what
Thank you.
happened was women, generally speaking, were the healers because men were doing other things. Like they were hunting or they were protecting or they were whatever they were doing. Women, it just fell mostly, not always, to women to deal with birth and death. And that underneath those two things fell midwifery, birthing babies, taking care of babies, breastfeeding babies, making sure babies survived. A lot of babies didn't survive. A lot of
Yeah,
women didn't survive childbirth, right?
right,
So
right.
that was a big, and then preparing people for death, dealing with the elderly, dealing with people who were sick. And it was felt to the female of the home to heal her family. Even up till the Victorian times, this was so common. Where women were brewing stuff in the house, making herbs, using, I'm sure if anybody who's listening to this knows a great grandmother who had like a tea she gave everyone or used, or a liniment that she might have made for pain, or things like this. People made their own beer, people made their own medicine. This was part of life. Like you made soup, you made medicine. You had it in the house, you just did. You knew how to use herbs, you knew where to find them. This was all part of life, just like you knew where to find berries, say, to eat. You knew where to find clover to help people, to help their blood be thinner, or whatever you were using it for, right? So you would find these things and you would harvest them and you would keep them and you would give them to your family. Now, were they 100% perfectly effective the way some scientific things are now? No, because they weren't as advanced. However, many of the things we use now as medicine come from there. And that's a whole nother story we're talking about. But things like, for example, white willow bark is what the basis of aspirin is.
Right.
So many herbs were investigated and scientifically looked at it and said, oh, this chemical does what? Let me check it out. Now we'll make pills, and make people spend $400 a bottle rather than let them harvest it themselves on their own lands, stuff like this.
And
So
the only way to stop people now from saying, no, never mind, I'll just use the white willow, was to say, okay, well, now you're a demon,
right.
and now you're hunted by the law, and when you take that in, you're kissing Satan's ass.
It's in silly things, like you can see it even in like those Outlander books, which is about Claire, this is about this woman who somehow falls through a bunch of stones and ends up back in Scotland, and 300 years earlier or something. And then she's an herbalist, or she dabbles in herbs in the 20th century, and she becomes a healer there, and she gets herself in all sorts of trouble because people assume she's a witch, and they try to hurt her several times during this thing. She's been in trouble in jail, almost burnt as a witch because somebody died by accident, or she did a surgery later on. She goes back as a full-blown surgeon. Like, she goes again, she comes back, learns how to be a surgeon, and then she goes back again as a surgeon, and she starts doing surgery, and they're going to burn her. They're going to kill her because you couldn't possibly. Women weren't allowed to think, let alone, heal.
I'm so glad you said Outlander. There was a sequence in one of the Outlander episodes, made me laugh immensely, and is really indicative of what you're saying. One of the, at that point, they're talking about the American Revolution, and one of the soldiers there, one of the generals, if you will, was dying, and I think it was something like appendicitis. And she said, you have to take out his appendix or whatever. And they said, no, 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 you have to blow smoke up his ass. And I laughed out loud. But back then, yes, what do you need to do? Bloodlet Washington and blow smoke up this man's ass. And that's what they thought were cures.
Yeah, don't pick on those two things, because, by the way, people still bloodlet in some healing traditions, and they do use leeches, and it does exist, and it does come from somewhere, and there is use in that. But it became the only thing a lot of people did.
Right.
So people do blow smoke up their hoo-hoos for different healing purposes. Not that that's the safest thing to do, but people do it still, and it comes from other cultures that have used this still traditionally for forever. So those things were taken in by the medical, quote, doctors, right? Eventually, what they did was form a college. They formed a medical college. Okay, so, and then if you didn't go to those colleges, you could not practice healing. They petitioned this, particularly in the United States, to make sure that there was a license. And if you didn't have this license, you were a quack, you were a snake oil salesman, you were pushed aside. It was not real. If you take these things, you could die. It's poisonous. We know better. Go listen to us in our college. But this is happening on the other side now with other things, where things like acupuncture schools and herbalism schools, or acupuncture in particular, massage therapy, have licenses now in many states, all states. I think in America you can practice, but in some states in the South, unfortunately, you have to be a medical doctor to do acupuncture. But most states and most countries now are coming around where it's like, okay, here's a license. You studied in a college for acupuncture, and now you're a doctor. You're an acupuncture doctor. Right? So they're fighting for that. On the other side, alternative medicine is doing that. Chiropractic schools do that. They call themselves doctors of chiropractic, and they have colleges that they go to just for that particular thing. So that's changed on the other side.
Of course, you have that for massage therapy. You have that for all over. So it's interesting. It's not so much the beat 'em, but the join 'em method. Okay, doctors, you want us to be licensed? Great. I am now a licensed herbologist. I am now a licensed astronomer. I am now a doctor of acupuncture, of Chinese medicine, etc. We're saying, okay, you want a license? Here's my license. Very interesting. Now I laud your praises a great deal on this, and I'm bringing up something about you in terms of taking your knowledge of witchcraft and the like, and you're doing exactly that. You are in college right now getting your doctorate in acupuncture, and you are getting your further certifications. You actually have quite many on herbalism and aromatherapy and so many others. Tell us a little bit about your latest journey in terms of galvanizing all the forces that you have.
Yeah, well, I've done a lot of different things, and none of the things I did have licenses or legality behind them. And no matter how much you study or or you try to study even further and further and further, and how safe you are, people go, oh, that's woo woo. That's woo. That's woo stuff. People still think acupuncture is woo. As a matter of fact, I was just reading a study, a scientific study that was done because they thought it was just a bunch of nonsense, where they had to torture poor little mice to make sure that it worked. And it does. And they don't know why. So if they don't know why, it must be fake. But it works. Whatever reason it works, it works. So all these things that are done and other people do, including magic, meditation, lighting candles, praying to gods and goddesses, praying to whatever you want, these things seem to work, right? But they don't have any legitimacy. So I decided to go and get, I'm working towards right now a master's degree in traditional Chinese medicine, Oriental medicine, and I would eventually maybe go get my doctorate in that as well, just so that is legitimized. But even then, it's still considered witchcraft. As a matter of fact, in my school, one of the ladies that I was talking to, who is Chinese, she said, "Oh, don't make such a fuss of this. It's not science. It's Chinese witchcraft. That's all it is."
Oh,
Which
that's
it is, right?
oh. Um, but nonetheless, you now are very courageous in bringing your ancient knowledge to all of us. And just in case we're concerned, you're going to say, look at that framed certificate on the wall. Look at that diploma on the wall. Look at all of this. I am a physician. I am a
Right.
legit physician. And
Well,
all of
yeah, I'm not just studying needles. I'm studying, bioscience. I have to take
right.
biochemistry and physics and many anatomy and physiology classes and all that. I just know, and I have to take pharmacology and all these very deep subjects. I have to study them and I have to pass them. And there's a huge licensing test that I have to pass. Two, actually. One is national, one is local in New York. And New York is its own because it's very cautious about it. But whatever, I have to take things that other medical professionals would have to take, such as nurses or physicians assistants or, phlebotomists, or these people, by the way, all of whom would be considered witches in the past. Just so
right.
If you took blood, forget it.
Wow. All right. It's very funny. After 20 years of you telling me all about this, of me understanding it, because when I first met you, a witch had a big pointy hat and
Oh, and they're very sexy. Don't they have heaving bosoms and wear black?
Well, that they started with the ghoulish face and the pointed hat, and they suddenly went to corsets. I'm not sure how that changed, but nonetheless, you so educated me on it, and even today, I'm still sitting here going, I didn't know that. So there's such a fountain. I thank you so much for that in me, and thank you for sharing it with everyone else. I asked one last question of you. We're going to go back to a moment where we had a good laugh a while ago. You were at a pagan fair, and you had candles and you had talismans and everything there that you're talking to people about, and you were sharing and they could buy, etc. And you were carving a candle for someone there. This was a Catholic woman, a devout woman, but she still had that in her to know these ancient times. And as you're preparing this spell for her to use, in the dead silence, she said to you, "I'm not going to go to hell for this, am I?" To all those people out there now who are listening to this and saying, and that, hey, that's funny, I just did that. I'm going to go to hell if I acknowledge this. What do you say to them today?
Well, I didn't go to hell. I'm not going to hell. I thought I was going to. The first time I went into, there's a store still in New York City called Enchantments. It's on East 7th Street. It used to be East 9th Street. It used to be between 2nd and 3rd. Now it's between 2nd and 1st and 8th. It's still there. If you want to go, you can go. It's very fun. It's very cool. And they're pretty legit, actually. But the first time I went in, I thought I went up to the door and I said, I'm going to go in and I'm going to get a book about witchcraft. And I know I'm going to go to hell, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because I was so curious, and I have been my whole life. I've been reading books on witchcraft since I'm a child. So whatever, it's the thing. So I did, and all I realized and all I learned was that I was being manipulated. I could believe in anything I wanted to. I could still be Christian. I could still be Catholic. I could still be devout and all of that. That would be fine, and that's okay. And that's just one path out of many paths that human beings have followed towards enlightenment. Now, people who are Christian, some or Jewish or Muslim, would think I am a heretic. They would want to kill me because if they believe what they believe is the right way and that anything else aside from that is wrong. And that's because they've been told since they're children that it is the right way. And anything aside from that is wrong. And the way people make that happen is by terrifying children, terrifying them, as I was, as this woman with the candle most likely was, although being Italian, and I know she was, there's a very strong tradition, and still in Italy and still in Italian families, in this kind of like, maybe it's true, grandma did it, kind of thing. Grandma wasn't a bad lady. She did it. She read tea leaves. She read tarot cards. She made candles for the neighbors. Really? She'd pour oil in the water to see if you had a spell on you, things like this. So it's still in their head. But so many people have been terrified that the devil is around. That's a whole nother story. And it's like Krampus is like the devil in a way too. We talk about Krampus. So the devil is here and the devil is bad and the devil is going to take your soul. And anybody who believes in anything that's not given to you from birth about this particular path, right, is a devil. It's very interesting to me that people who are Buddhist don't feel this way. People who are Hindu, they don't feel this way. They don't do this. This is just these three Abrahamic religions, pretty much, which are the biggest ones, obviously, that do this to children. They terrorize children, terrorize them. Instead of letting children just I think holistically find that path may be the path for them, for their enlightenment, for their morality, for the goodness of their life, that it should enrich their life and make them have peace in life. It's like you're born into this thing. If you don't do this thing, the way we say, you're going to go to hell, you're going to be burnt, you're going to be ostracized, you're a witch, you're a devil, you're going to go suffer, people will hate you. That is told to you when you're a child. I know that anybody who's listening who's in those religions has heard that growing up. So that's why it's like, it's still buried. It's still, people are afraid, people are frightened. I've had friends who, if I bring this up, and I don't know if any of them are listening today, I hope that they are, they won't talk to me about it. They think they like me, but they're like, well, Mary, I think you're with the devil. So I don't know if I should talk to you anymore. I've had people say that to me. So I'm not with the devil. By the way, witches don't believe in the devil. They just do not. It doesn't exist. It didn't exist in the pagan world. It doesn't exist in Wicca. It does not exist in witchcraft. It is not true. It is bullshit. All of that is bullshit. Witches do not believe in the devil. Yeah, we believe in the dark stuff. We know it's there. Just like there's the sun just went down and I watched it happen out my window. Just like now it's dark. There's dark, but there is no devil coming up out of the depths of the hell to get you. There's not such a thing. Yeah, there were gods of the underworld, and we can talk about those another time because that's an interesting subject. But there is no devil. This is made up. Look it up. Research. Go into religions that are not Abrahamic. Look in Buddhism and see, is there a devil? Look in Hinduism and see, is there a devil? Well, there are dark, scary gods in Hinduism for sure. But do they call it the devil? And can you remove your fear and say, oh, that's pagan and wrong and against the path of God, so I can't look at it? Can you open a book? Can you educate yourself? Can you look at, God's tool, Google, and look in there and see, can you find the education you need? Can you look up the truth? More and more people are doing that though now, more and more people. Even movies like The Witch was kind of an interesting look at this whole thing. Was it that they were poisoned? Was it that this goat actually talked to this girl? Was it that this girl was murdered and this is what she saw because she was so sure it was true? Was it real? We don't know. And if it was real, wow, I wish I was in a forest flying around with a bunch of women on brooms. How cool was that? But we know what that was. We know that was a certain type of herbalism that people used to just like people use, LSD today. They used certain kinds of medicines to trip and to see things. And those were not true things. They were on the earth. They were laying down, imagining these things happening. So I can get into that for 3 days too. But it's nonsense. It's a bunch of nonsense. There's no evil. Yes, there are bad people. Yes, bad people do bad things. Whether or not they use magic to do it, they're still going to do bad things. There are plenty of people who murder and harm children and rape women who are not witches. And there's many, many more of those than there are people who practice these arts. And they are arts. They're creative, beautiful arts that many people are finding a way to revitalize in a modern society. And by the way, witchcraft is growing exponentially, especially in America and especially amongst women. Women are reclaiming that. There's this actual saying, we are the great granddaughters of the women you couldn't burn. So there's a reclaiming of it. Yeah.
So you're saying to the people out there, um, to those who spread that fear and those who receive that fear, just open your mind, read a book, talk to someone, look at it a second time. Don't immediately assume you're going to hell. And by the way, the hell that we know of didn't start until the 1400s with Dante Alighieri.
Right.
And
And we're
that's
not trying to be evil here or convert anybody away from their religion. I think that those religions are beautiful. I do. I believe that there's a strong way to actual enlightenment through all of those paths. Every one of those three religions I keep mentioning are beautiful, special, powerful, creative, and just one of if it speaks to you, one of the strongest paths you could take towards enlightenment.
and
So
the irony, I could say the same thing about them. Look at your own religion again. Uh, there are two versions of every religion, including the three Abrahamic. Uh, uh, we are told certain things about being Muslim. We are told certain things about being Jewish, and there's even the jokes about recovering Catholic and things like that. There, there's a depth to them that maybe instead of saying "ew" or "I won't" or whatever, maybe there's that moment of saying, "Let me look at the original faith," as
look at each
opposed to what
look
someone's
at each
telling
I
you.
mean, if I was, being Catholic, was Catholic, I did study Judaism. I did took a deep look at the Muslim religion and said, okay, what are those? They're, and how do they work, and how do they enlighten people, and where's the morality and the beauty in them? And they're so deep. They're so deep, and all three of those are. Like, say that again. I'm not saying, I want to be sure. I say this again. I know we're a little over, but I'm
Yeah,
not a demon. I'm not a devil. You don't have to hate me or Jay for talking about this stuff. You don't have to say, oh, how dare you people go against my beliefs, and that you should burn in hell, or any other thing you should think of. You should really say, you know what? This is an educational thing. And if you don't want to listen, don't listen. You don't
right.
have to. You don't have to listen to it. It's fine. This is just another way of looking at things. It's just turning the Rubik's Cube one other way. That's it. We're looking at a different color. That's all it is. It's not bad. It's just different.
And ladies and gentlemen, I got bad news for you. The next time you cross your fingers, you're a witch. The next time you will not step on a crack, you're a witch. The next time you say, I'm going to use my grandmother's special tea because it made me feel good, not only are you a witch, but your grandmother was a
Yeah, that's a
witch.
potion, by the way.
Right.
Mhm.
The next time you say Yuletide, you're a witch. The next time you say Santa Claus, you're a witch. The next time you put that special thing in your pocket, or that special ring, or that necklace or something, because it's your
Or the next time you knock
charm.
on wood or touch wood. Yeah.
Exactly. The next time you or wear that special ring or anything because it's your luck charm, it makes you feel good, you are a witch. Mary,
But
thank you.
I want
Thank
to
you.
say they're not necessarily a witch, but they're practicing witchcraft. Let's say that.
No, you're a witch. See, let's scare them. Anyway, Mary, thank you so much. I continue to be educated by you, and that's saying something because I'm an arrogant bastard. And if someone's able to teach me anything, that really says something. So thank you so much, and thank you for sharing this with our viewers. I think it's really amazing, and I look forward to discussions of holidays and the various elements of all the magical medicinals and rituals that that you would share with us. And best of luck on your journey into becoming Dr. McCary.
Thank you. I need it.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. We will have other holiday episodes during December, and then obviously we're back in January, uh, carrying on about alternate ways of helping your mind, body, and spirit, and so many others. Thank you again for being part of this. Ciao.
Bye.